I was sitting at the school picking up my son today, and I was, reading not a full book, but a little pamphlet I was reading. And I thought about Keith Lamont Scott. And I thought about how he was waiting on his son to pick his son up from school, just like I was doing. And I thought, and I'm like, I feel like I'm vulnerable here. Stay with me. I feel like I'm vulnerable here because this is all he was doing. But then I realized something. There's another element to this besides just being black. You know exactly where I'm going. In the neighborhood that I live in and the school that I pick up my son at, and all of the problems that I may have, the reality of the matter is there will not be a cop who runs up on me in that neighborhood at that school under almost any circumstance because of the type of neighborhood that I live in and the type of school that my kids go to and the relationship that the police have in our community. The relationship is one of serving our community and one of, if this person is not an attorney, they probably have their attorney on our speed dial. So I'm not just going to rush in and act a fool with this neighborhood. Now, had I been the same exact black person sitting in a car driving, let's say 20 miles north to Roxbury, Massachusetts, in downtown Boston area, and I sat in a car there, it's a possibility that I could just be sitting in my car and the police officers run and do something crazy and assume the worst of me because of the neighborhood I live in and the neighborhood I was in. What am I saying? I'm saying there is an element to this that cannot be denied. And I don't want, and anyone who would deny it is lying to themselves, because the way the police treat black people is different based on the neighborhood that they find those black people. And I'm not saying that you're not going to be racially profiled. I'm not saying that you're going to never face racism. But the reality of it is the neighborhood that I live in, I wish they would try some stuff like that, because you know what happened? The attorney my attorney who's on speed dial would get a call right then and there, and instantly the situation changes. And they won't only do that because of my relationships and my quote unquote class. They also won't do that because of the relationship that they have with that community, period. Here's what I'm saying. Impoverished neighborhoods are like fodder for policing agencies. The police feel a certain liberty in impoverished neighborhoods because they know that these people probably have no recourse. They probably have nobody and would have to depend on a public defender in their situations. And that gives them a level, a latitude to carry themselves in a way they absolutely would not carry themselves in a upper middle class black neighborhood or upper middle class mixed neighborhood. Absolutely not on any day of the week. I don't care what you say, how you cut it. Look at your income, look at where you live, and ask yourselves, are your cops going to be this imbecilic that they're just going to run up on a man sitting in a van waiting on his kid? And not ask questions before. They may pull a gun on you, but they're going to ask questions first. Now, does that mean I will not get harassed like next week in my neighborhood? No, it doesn't mean that. But it does mean my chances are increased if I'm in an impoverished neighborhood. And so you have to ask, you have to dig deeper in these scenarios and realize that, yes, it is a racial problem, but there is such a class dynamic involved, because I wish they would come through my neighborhood acting crazy. All I have to do is make 1 or 2 phone calls and that police officer would get a reprimand, depending on the situation. Clearly, I mean, it's not just going to happen. But depending on the situation, that officer could very well get a reprimand for carrying himself in a way that is not conducive to a good relationship with the community that we're in. That is the relationship that every person should have with the policing. Every neighborhood should be that. The police are there to protect and serve. And when they find an impoverished community, they're there to stop and frisk. They're there to harass and berate. They're there to fill a quota. I wish you would come to some of our neighborhoods with a quota. I wish you would. And the very people who would argue against me are some of the wealthiest black people, because I guess this is their way of staying connected with the fight and the struggle. Like they like to pretend. Like I was reading, I really thought about this because I was reading the dude, something Kumar Bell, I can't really remember his name. He a comedian. I was reading his tweet and he was like, I am Keith Lamont Scott. No, you're not. You're not Keith Lamont Scott, because you're probably not going to be sitting in the hood just waiting on your kid. You're probably pretty much better off than me sitting in a nice neighborhood in a nice car. And it's not about your car and it's not about you and how you're dressed, but it's about the relationship that the police have with your neighborhood. But they'll say, oh, no, you're talking about respectability. No, I'm not. I'm saying yeah, I'm trying not to cuss so much. I'm saying that I may very well get profiled next week in my neighborhood. But are they going to run out guns blazing in where we live around kids? You must be you're out of your mind. Crazy. I wish a police officer would. And I realize there's an entire segment of poor people, particularly African-American poor people, who cannot assert that confidence with their policing agencies. They can't. You know why? Because the police are the predators in their neighborhood, and they are the prey. They are the profit center. They are the ones who drive these jobs. They're the ones who keep revenues coming into the cities. The police are the predators. They are the prey. And and I'm not even in a rich neighborhood. I'm in a middle class neighborhood. But the relationship that the police have with us, they would never come running through a neighborhood, guns blazing on any day of the week, unless there is somebody there ready, unless it's some kind of dire situation. So we can't neglect the fact and the reality that what's happening overwhelmingly is happening in our poor black neighborhoods. And it's worth mentioning that, because if we're going to talk about a solution to stopping this, it has to be about empowering them, not only tearing down systemic racism, which has to be a part of the equation, but we also have to empower people economically so that they are not at the mercy of people who are there as predators to extract profits from them. Tell me I'm lying. Bring me the statistical evidence. Show me where black people who live in affluent neighborhoods are harassed at the same rate as black people living in impoverished neighborhoods. Bring me that data and I'll eat my words. But you won't, because you can't, because it's not the case.